Okay, so we are going to record this lesson today because I think a lot of people are having trouble getting onto the Google Meet. Today's lesson is all about the Renaissance art, which is probably the most important aspect of the Renaissance. Um, so the artists of the Renaissance in the beginning, they wanted to imitate nature. They wanted you to see reality in their subjects. At the same time, they wanted you to notice that human beings are the center of the piece. So you have some paintings that are done where nature is the center before the Renaissance, and now we're going to start to see human beings are the center during the Renaissance. There's a couple of different types of art that was produced in the Renaissance. The first is called a fresco, and a fresco is a painting done on fresh, wet plaster with a water-based paint. So I want you to picture kind of like the walls that are inside the hacienda where they take plaster and they just kind of smear it in big chunks all over the wall, and then they would take watercolors and paint on top of those. And the reason they did that was because before, when they're painting on a flat surface, there was no depth to the picture. So when you do the fresco, where you have some of the paint and plaster coming out towards you, it gives you more of a 3D effect, and it makes the human beings come alive. So that 3D illusion makes things more realistic. So Masaccio was the first one to do a fresco, and this is the fresco by Masaccio. So you can see, if you're not distracted by the one guy wearing the short skirt there, that he's going to use a lot of different tricks to show depth in the painting. So in the back, he's going to draw mountains in different ways, layering them so that it looks like the mountains are in the far off distance. And then he's also going to do some tricks with the robes that they're wearing, painting them and shading them in a certain light so that it looks as if the clothing has movement to it, or that you can see the creases in that clothing. And so these are kind of newer tricks from that. This is also another fresco that was done at the time, and you can see that they use kind of different depth tricks to show the way that the walls are structured and make it feel as if there's a room in the back there. And then it makes it feel as if the people are more forward. And so those are all depth tricks that you can use when you're doing art. So there's a lot of artists from this time period that are going to develop new ways of doing things. So you've got artists that are going to stress the technical side of painting, understanding the laws of perspective. And the way that you do that, the way you manipulate space and light, is through geometry. It's through different shapes from a geometric perspective that allows the room to look like it's a deep room or a far room or a curved room. But other artists are going to investigate movement by humans and the human anatomy. So if you actually right now were to feel the calf of your leg and make the muscle kind of tense and then relax it, you can feel the different lines in your calf muscle. And these artists are going to figure out how to show that so that it makes it look as if there's movement going on in the picture. Nudes are very common during the Renaissance because it shows the entire body. We're not going to look at nudes today in class because that's just awkward, but it was very common at the time. So we have our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from this time period. This is where those names come from, with Raphael, Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Donatello. So we're going to look at Donatello first. This is a picture of Donatello, of what he actually looked like, and then a statue of him later on in his life. Donatello was more about statues. He studied the statues of the Greeks and the Romans, and he wanted to do a freestanding sculpture. So oftentimes statues were built into columns, but in this case, Donatello, as you can see with this statue here, the statue is freestanding, meaning it's not connected to a wall, it stands on its own. Now, we've got Filippo Brunelleschi, who was inspired by those Roman buildings with the columns and the arches. He felt like the Gothic styles overwhelmed you, that when you walk into some of those churches that have the stained glass windows and the open spaces, that you kind of forget why you're there and you look around at the church and don't focus on the religion of it. So he designed San Lorenzo, and he put lots of arches in it, lots of columns in it, and not a lot of distraction through like the stained glass window and the paintings and whatnot, so that you're there to just focus on your religion and not on the building. The final stage of the Italian Renaissance ran from 1490 to 1520, so only about a 30-year period. And that's when we see Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael. So Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael. Da Vinci mastered the art of realistic paintings, and he did this because he would go down to the graveyards and the places where the dead bodies were kept, and he would dissect the human body so that he could understand the muscles that were inside, understand the movement of the human body, the creases, and how our bodies work. It sounds a little grim, but it made him a better painter because he's a student of what we call realism. In other words, he wants to know exactly how the body actually works to put the painting together. So this is Da Vinci. He is best known for several works of art. He wanted to capture the perfection of nature and humans, perfection that can't be expressed in that realism idea. So he's most famous probably for the Mona Lisa, which is down on the right-hand side, or Madonna and the Babe, which is the picture of Mary and Jesus. And then that top one there is his self-portrait. So this is the Mona Lisa here. The Mona Lisa is considered one of the most famous paintings ever. It's actually pretty small. It's not much bigger than your notebook, but millions of people have seen this painting. It's in Paris at the Louvre, and there's a lot of debate as to why, if she's smiling, is she not smiling, who is she? The name of the person has never been discovered as to who he was supposedly painting. Some people, however, feel as if you take his self-portrait and you line it up to the Mona Lisa, that you actually can see that it's a female version of Da Vinci. And some people believe there was no woman in the painting. It was just him doing a female version of himself. So this is another one of Da Vinci's famous paintings, The Last Supper. And there's a lot of things about this painting that people don't ever realize. I'm sure that you've seen this painting once or twice before, but have you ever looked at the bottom to see their feet? I don't know that many people have ever noticed that their feet are there and that they're wearing sandals and whatnot. But also, as you look at this painting, if you take away the religious idea of it and just look at the painting itself, you're supposed to kind of zoom in and focus on what are the people doing in this painting. So when I was growing up and when my brother was growing up, they had a book called Where's Waldo? And you'd have to look through the pictures and try and find Waldo. So that's kind of what we're going to do with our paintings today. I want you to really look at these paintings and see what is it that's going on in the painting that you may never have noticed. So like this guy over here, where's my mouse? Okay, let's go back up here. Okay, so this guy over here, if you notice, has his hand and he's kind of reaching for a biscuit. Okay, he's going to be in sly, paying attention to these guys over here. This one's pointing off in the direction of Jesus. This guy over here is going, not me. I didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. And this guy over here, whoa, Jesus, are you going to eat? What are you going to do? This one here, I don't think you're supposed to put your finger up at Jesus like that. I'm not quite sure. And these guys over here are having their own argument or discussion. But what a lot of people don't realize is if you kind of look right here, this guy's holding a bag of money. And that's because at the Last Supper, Jesus is saying, one of you is going to betray me for money. That's what they're all going, oh, not me. Who is it? Whoa, Jesus, what's going on? And it's this guy here, Judas, that is going to be considered the traitor, and he's already been paid and has his money. So you have to kind of look for these tiny details and see what you can find in the pictures. This is some of the journals of Da Vinci. So you can see after he would dissect bodies, he would actually draw the muscle structure of what our bodies look like underneath the skin so that he could understand movement. And that's like that same idea I told you with your calf. You can feel the difference in your muscles when you strain your muscles and then you release that strain. And that's what Da Vinci wanted to understand. So this is Raphael, and Raphael was considered a very famous painter. He's known as one of Italy's finest painters by the time he was 25. He was admired for his paintings of Madonna, which is another name for Mary in the Catholic religion. And he looked for ideal beauty that surpassed human standards. So oftentimes he made things more perfect than they needed to be. But he also liked paintings where he had harmony, balance, and order. This is one of his paintings of Madonna holding the baby Jesus. And then this one is called The School of Athens. And I like this one again because you're kind of looking for things in this picture. And what do you see here? The first thing that jumps out to me is, I'm going to There. This dude right here just kind of, what are you doing? You're just kind of splayed out on your own. This one over here is kind of like, oh, I don't want to be doing this right now. We have a streaker. He's about to run through. No clothing whatsoever on him. This guy over here is just sitting up against the wall. People are having discussions, and you might notice that they're not all dressed the same, and that's because Raphael put people from different time periods into this painting, and so different aspects. And actually, if you're really, really paying attention and you look over here, I'm going to make it a bigger picture in just a minute. Raphael put himself in the picture. So you can see that he put himself in the picture. And again, it's hard for me to show you the beauty of these pictures through photographs, but we're giving it our best shot. Oh, there's a better one. Okay. So down there in that right-hand corner is Raphael. And like I said, we got the guy splayed out on the chair. We got the guy that's streaking that's about to run through. There's just a naked baby over there in the left-hand corner. And so if you're really looking at the faces in the pictures, can you tell which one are men or women? Can you tell which ones are from the same time periods? And it's kind of like a game of trying to figure out who's who. This is where the School of Athens has actually been portrayed in this building here in Rome. So Michelangelo's our last major painter of the time period. He was an accomplished painter, sculptor, architect. He worked with great passion and dedication, and he did the Sistine Chapel. So what he did was he painted the ceiling of a very famous church, and he painted it based on the idea of the beauty and idealized human form. And what that means is the more beautiful the body, the more divine or godlike. So when he did, this is Michelangelo, and when he did pictures of people that were considered angels, people that were considered good, people that were, or when he portrayed God, he makes the proportions very light and very perfect. So you see this guy here is, very muscly, and you see that there's good proportions. Down here in the right-hand corner, those are female angels, so they're drawn kind of lighter. And then as the picture moves downward, you see how the picture gets darker at the bottom, and the picture of the people at the bottom, they're very skinny, kind of grotesque. Their arms and legs are being pushed in ways that look uncomfortable, and that's because he's portraying that as hell. So at the bottom of the picture where it's hell, the pictures are drawn deformed and dark. As you move upwards towards God, they get lighter and lighter and become more and more perfect. On the right-hand side there is supposed to be God reaching out with his finger and touching the Adam from Adam and Eve. Some people feel as if this painting is actually a portrayal of the mind, meaning that your rationale and your ideas about faith are found in your brain, and that's where the concept of religion is. You can kind of make a decision for yourself on that. So this is the Sistine Chapel, and what's amazing about this, the ceiling goes on for quite a bit of space, and Michelangelo had to lay on his back on scaffolding in order to paint this ceiling, and he did this for years because it took a very long time to paint this. So you have to imagine how difficult that would be. If I asked you right now to lay on the floor, put a notebook in front of you, right in front of your face, and then paint beautiful portraits, maybe you could for a few minutes, but after hours, days, weeks, months, years, it would be very trying and taxing on your body and probably your mental health. Michelangelo also designed St. Peter's Basilica, the dome there, which is also in Italy. The artist of the northern Italy wanted to portray the realistic world, but in a different way. They didn't have access to large open fresco walls as others did, so they decorated wood panels for the altars in churches. Van Eyck is one of my favorite artists from this time period because he actually is the one that's going to start to use oil paints. So you guys know when you use watercolors when you were a little kid, the colors tend to be very light. They're kind of muted because the water dilutes them a little bit. With oil paints, they're very, very bright colors, and you can do very tiny details because the oil paint is heavier than water paints. Now, this is my favorite painting from that time period, and it's because they had no TV back then. They didn't have electricity, so they had to go to bed as soon as it got dark unless they had candles. And so what people would do for fun is they would buy paintings and then look at them. So if I asked you guys right now, what are you noticing in this picture? What jumps out to you right away? And I'm going to give you kind of a second to look at that and think about it. So I'm hoping some of the things that jump out to you right away is this guy's creepy hat. It's way too big for his head, right? He's holding this woman's hand, but not in the way that you would hold somebody's hand if you were dating or if you were friends. It's kind of hand over hand. And then is he giving her a blessing? Is he saying hello? What is he doing? You might notice that she looks like she has thorns coming out of her head, horns, but that's not. That's part of the area where they would have hung. They've attached those to your hair and wove it into your hair so that your headdress would sit higher on your hair. Some people think that she looks like she's pregnant in this picture, that she's like got her hand resting on her belly there. But in actuality, she's holding up the front of her dress. So if you look a little bit closer, there's a random dog in this painting. He's just kind of chilling at the bottom. Now, those shoes that are in the bottom left-hand corner, those are actually shoes that you would put over your regular shoes. Because remember, the streets are full of human waste, animal waste, water, mud, all sorts of gross stuff. So you put those over your regular shoes so they wouldn't get dirty. You might also notice that they have the bed in the background. There's a mirror where you can see the other side of it. There's writing on the wall there. Some of these things that kind of stand out to you. Now, who is this guy to this woman? Are they friends? Are they father and daughter? Are they priest and layperson? So if you're looking at this painting, you're not quite sure. But then if I tell you that this painting is called The Wedding, now, is she the bride? Is he the groom? Is he the priest? Why isn't she wearing white instead of green? So it's kind of this idea where people would make up a story of what they thought was going on here. So just like if you go to the airport or if you go to Walmart and you kind of watch people and you make up a story about who they are, that's what people did with paintings. Because you can make up a story and it's up to you as to what you think the painting means and what the painter wanted you to see. So that makes it more fun to look at paintings if you do it that way, making up your own story as opposed to trying to figure it out. Like in my opinion, that guy's feet are way too big. It doesn't match his skinny little ankles, and his jacket is kind of weird too. If I saw this guy in an alley, I'm walking the other way. So you get to decide what you think is strange or beautiful, what you think the story is, and that's what makes art more interesting. So the last one is Albrecht Dürer, and this is the Adoration of the Magi. So this is supposed to be the three wise men coming to see the baby Jesus after he's born with Mary. And this one, again, if I asked you to look at some of the things in this picture, what do you see here? What jumps out to you? What's strange? What's done well? What is normal? What's not normal? And so the first thing I notice right away is this guy that's right in front of the baby is kind of being a little too close to the baby Jesus. He's got his beard right up in the baby Jesus's face. You might notice over here to the right is a donkey with his mouth open, and it looks like he's about to bite the mother of Jesus, Mary. You can see the one wise man's wearing tights, and it looks like he's wearing house shoes or slippers, and he's obviously traveled a really long way. There's horses in the back that are kind of running around. You can see the manger is not a barn like we normally picture in our minds. The manger is a rundown building where she gave birth to the baby Jesus. Also, you might notice that Mary and Jesus are portrayed as white. During that time period, Mary, Jesus, Joseph, none of these important figures would have been white. They would have been from the Middle East. So their skin would have been a very different color. And Mary doesn't look like she's 15. Mary looks like she's an older woman, and in fact, she was much younger than that. So you can kind of look at this painting and see different aspects to it and notice different things. And that's what becomes interesting about art, is if you're not just looking at the picture and saying, oh yeah, it's a nice picture, but kind of picking out the things that make it unusual or different. Okay, so that's it for today. There's going to be a couple of questions that are posted on Google Classroom. Just answer the 2 questions on Google Classroom and you're done for today.